What up, No Nation? It's your guy, Kelvin Hunt, editor of ChopChat.com. Welcome back to the Built for Playmakers YouTube channel. Man, getting ready for this huge ACC championship game against Louisville on Saturday night. Hope you had a chance to check out the film review for the Florida game. Basically, we took a look at Tate Rodemaker, how he performed, and the guys around him. You can find that. That's the video I posted before this one. But as I was recording that video yesterday, a lot of things started happening that I didn't see until I finished recording on social media. And man, it's crazy what's happening right now. FSU is they were already in a great position from a recruiting standpoint. They have the best recruiting class in the nation when it comes to schools in Florida, in the Sunshine State. They've done a great job of accumulating talent from Florida and Georgia. Is something that we've harped on for the past couple of years, and they've addressed that. But man, it's about to get even crazier in a good way for the Noles. If you follow me on social media, you may have seen me pointing out some things regarding Miami and Florida all the way back in April and May. In May, I told some Miami 247 guys that, they were hyping up all of these official visits that they were going to have and how they were going to get the best defensive tackle class or D-line class in the country. And they got all these guys coming or whatever. But looking at the guys they were taking before that, I knew Miami was in trouble. And I said as much. And I mean, they were taking guys that they had no business taking for Mario Cristobal. And lo and behold, they got like 1% of the guys that they thought they were going to get. At the time, they had like a 40% blue chip ratio. It's still around 40%. They just took a defensive end from Alabama who does not have an Alabama or Auburn offer. He's ranked in the thousands in the composite. And so when you're taking guys like that this late in the game, when you're offering a quarterback that's in your backyard this late in the game, the writing's on the wall there, so to speak. Their class consists of a ton of 3 stars. When you look at the per player average ranking, Miami has the 19th highest per player ranking, even though their total ranking is like number 12 or so, something like that. So there's a large gap between Miami and Florida State's class when you look at a per player average, right? Florida State has a 70% blue chip ratio and will likely add some big time top 100 recruits moving forward as we look to close out this recruiting cycle. When you look at Florida had a really good recruiting class on paper in June. I remember I was in Jamaica and I saw they were just on one and they were adding all these guys. And I said at the time, I was like, man, you knew Florida wasn't going to be great this year on the field. And it was going to be difficult for them to hold on to these guys. And so they had 11, I think it was 11 really high rated guys, but 6 of them were from out of state. Like I'm talking about like Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, places like that. And they had already lost a couple of those guys in the last couple of weeks. And so, of course, they dropped from top 3 to they're behind Florida State. I know that for sure. But as I was recording last night, they fired 2 coaches. They fired their defensive line coach and Corey Raymond, who's well known in recruiting circles. Not really great at developing players, but he's good. He's a good recruiter. But they fired those 2 guys yesterday. And so the responses by some of the commits that Florida has, it was almost like they didn't know it was going to happen. One highly rated safety that they have, he's like the second or third highest ranked guy they have in their class. And he posted on social media, he was like, WTH, like what the hell, right? And so you got to think there's going to be some fallout from that. And so, they've already lost some guys. How is that going to impact the guys that they have that's still committed. Obviously, you would think Napier has an idea who he wants to hire or who's going to hire, but that's no guarantee that that's going to solidify the class and keep it together. So they could lose some more guys from that class, and they probably were going to lose more guys anyway, considering how they finished the season with like 5 straight losses. So when you look at where Florida is, when you look at Miami's going to go to a bowl game, but they arguably may not even have a scholarship quarterback on the roster. Tyler Van Dyke entered the transfer portal yesterday. One of their top linebackers entered the portal yesterday, and then one of their running backs entered the portal yesterday. So what that tells me is usually, if you have a program of solid footing, these guys, they know they're going to a bowl game. They, can play in that bowl game and then enter the portal or whatever. But the portal window did change though. So that may have impacted things now that I think about it. But still, the fact that they're entering the portal at this point, tells me that Miami may not be in a good spot. You got decent guys from Miami's team leaving to go to the portal. They got 16 3-stars in their 2024 recruiting class. I mean, I know they say they're all about developing players and playing a whole bunch of freshmen, but looks like that development didn't happen because they're talking about going to the portal now to try to get guys to improve their play on the field. So I thought they were going to develop the freshmen that were playing a bunch of snaps against the Bethune-Cookmans and Temples and so forth and so on. So I say all that to say this, FSU has a top 3 recruiting class with about, 4 or 5 places remaining for some top high school players to join. They'll have some attrition. They'll have some guys that will enter the transfer portal. I could think of about 8 to 10 guys right now off the top of my head who they're not getting to play, and they're not really going to play probably. And so we'll see some guys enter the portal. I look at it this way. FSU coaches understand the value of retaining players. We saw that last year with, Jared Verse, Jordan Travis, Trey Benson, so forth and so on, Fabian Lovett. They will do everything in their power to keep the players that they feel like they have to keep, that they need to keep. If you see a guy from FSU enter the portal that everybody says is talented or whatever, and maybe they've gotten to play a little bit, but they haven't been on the field a ton. What I would say to that is, for whatever reason, there's a reason why they're not on the field more or haven't been on the field more. If they haven't been injured, for whatever reason, there's a reason if they were that good, they would be in the game more. Is all I'm saying, right? If they were good enough to contribute to FSU winning games, they would be out there on that field more. So if you see some guys enter the portal and you might be kind of surprised, think about how much they've played or not played and do the math. All right. Also, FSU is going to be in a position of power when it comes to the transfer portal. They have arguably the best proven track record of attaining guys from the portal and putting them in positions to be productive and then go on to get drafted. Jermaine Johnson, Jamie Robinson, or 2 that come right off the top of my head. Trey Benson's going to be drafted. Jared Verse is going to be drafted. Several other guys are probably going to be drafted. FSU's 12-0. So they're seen as one of the top teams out there. So they are going to be in a position of leverage to get, the difference makers that are needed from the transfer portal. You saw it last year, Braden Fisk, and the coaches do a really good job of evaluating that talent and getting guys that fit the culture of FSU. So when it comes to high school recruiting, FSU is going to have a top 3 class minimum. When it comes to the transfer portal, they'll probably take, I don't know, probably 8 to 10 guys, maybe give or take, depending on how many guys enter the portal from the roster. And those guys are going to be guys that are top of the line um, at whatever position they play, because they want to, guys that are really good from the transfer portal want to go to a team that can win. That's why you got Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman saw FSU last year, 10-3, prolific offense, chance to win. That's why you got Keon Coleman, right? So when you go back and look at the Floridas and the Miamis, those guys don't have the track record that FSU has. Miami's tried to use the portal, but they haven't had the same type of impact with those guys that FSU has had. Same with Florida. Both Florida and Miami got guys from the portal, but you didn't see them on all ACC teams or all SEC teams the way you saw Johnny Wilson, Trey Benson, Jared Verse, Fabian Lovett, all these guys, Tatum Bethune, all these guys were all ACC last year, right? You didn't see that with the Miamis and the Floridas. And so FSU's in a prime position to there's already separation, right? I know Miami wants to look at the scoring margin on that game of being a one-score game at the end, although everybody knows that was a fluke play to cut the lead from 14 to 7. They want to point to that as progression, but when you really look at it, Miami literally does not have a quarterback right now. Ja'Cory Brown could play in the bowl game potentially, but there's a reason why he hasn't played all year. He wants to transfer, from what I've been told. They literally, Emory Williams has a broken arm, suffered against FSU. He can't play. They literally, and Van Dyke's in the portal, they literally may have to put a walk-on out there to play quarterback in Miami in the bowl game. Florida, obviously they won a good team this year. They got some young talent, but who wants to go to Florida and look at that schedule that they're going to play next year, and they're not going to be good next year. They might win 6-7 games tops, maybe. So you're going to start hearing the noise of, is Napier going to be there for the long term, right? That's what you're going to hear from opposing teams. And so guys from the portal want to hear that and be like, I can go to somewhere else that's more stable or whatever. So I say all that to say this: FSU, from a high school recruiting standpoint, has the best recruiting class. Much better than Miami. Florida, we'll see. There could be some more attrition from that class. And if so, you're going to see that gap widen. When you look at players that FSU is going to get from the portal, they're going to be top of the line guys. Miami and Florida are going to be looking over for scraps, because you still have other teams out there, your Alabamas, your Georgias, Ohio State, those type of teams. They're also they don't use the portal quite as much because they have established high school recruiting, right? Which is where FSU is going nowadays. But they will dip into that portal and get a guy at a position of need. You saw that with Alabama, with the safety that FSU was trying to recruit. The last name was Key. Jalen Key, I think was his name. They dipped in the portal and got him, and he contributed for Alabama this year. So Florida and Miami, they're going to be fighting an uphill battle when it comes to getting guys that can be difference makers on their team next year, because they don't have the track record that FSU has. They weren't very good the last 2 years. So those guys that are really good are going to look at those programs and be like, you're all right, but I can go to FSU, or I can go to Alabama, or I can go to Ohio State, or, I can go to Oklahoma, I can go to wherever there's an established track record of success. And so just stay tuned, man. It's I think FSU is going to close strong on the recruiting trail, and it's going to be fun to watch the clown shows over in Miami and in Gainesville. I know those guys like to say that gap was closed, but it did not. It is not. I wrote about it after the Miami game, and you can't just use one game as a measuring stick like that anyway. I mean, Miami was going life and death with Virginia and Georgia Tech and who was the other team that they almost lost to? So yeah, Miami it's not a good team. Florida wasn't a good team. And FSU will do everything they can to retain the guys that they feel like they need to retain while adding those impact players from the portal and then close them with a strong high school class. So, yeah, just wanted to kind of give you that context regarding Miami and Florida. I know Miami and Florida fans on social media, talk reckless and just say all types of things, but I could see it a mile away. I knew Florida wasn't going to be good. I knew they were not going to hold that class together. I knew Miami wasn't recruiting at the level that everybody thought they were. Mario Cristobal is a good recruiter, but he's not an elite guy. I said it when they hired him, and he had the new Carson Mill last year. He had Ruiz funding a lot of things with NIL, but once the games get played, you saw like they may not be good this year. The results results speaks for themselves, right? So Mario has tried to boost his high school recruiting ranking by taking a ton of 3-star guys. That's something that Mike Norvell could have done when everybody was criticizing him for not having really highly rated classes. When they were finishing 19 and 22 or whatever, Mike was taking smaller numbers from the high school rankings and then using the portal to offset that. Mike could have had top 15, a top 12 high school recruiting class if he wanted. He could have went out there and added 10 more 3-stars to those classes. He knew that wasn't gonna help FSU get to where they needed to get to. Had he done that, FSU would not have won the last 18 games in a row. I promise you. He attacked the portal. He was ahead of the game, ahead of the curve, more so than anyone else. And so now that approach is putting FSU in a great position to get those top guys from the portal. And at the same time, they've also maneuvered in the high school rankings and won enough and established those relationships to get those top high school guys too. So he threaded that needle perfectly between transitioning from the portal to high school and then going back into the portal and getting guys that can help them win games. So FSU's in a great spot, and it's going to be fun to watch how all this ends. And FSU's going to be standing on top of that mountain and looking down on Miami like where you guys at, and looking at Florida like where you guys at. And it's a beautiful place to be in. But again, appreciate all the support, and it's going to be a fun next few weeks as we close out the 2024 recruiting cycle. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you turn your notifications on if you haven't. Make sure you like this video. Help me get this out there to more FSU fans. And definitely appreciate it. And until next time, go Noles.